Praise the Lord. Good evening. Welcome to our April 8th, 2025 City Council Works session. I turn you over to Mr. Winter Bender.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Before you today, we have another budget reconciliation. There are a couple of questions that you and your peers have posed and have come up in our budget process, so we're going to queue those up to begin with. And then business item briefings are those elements or aspects that will be later positioned for your vote, but we want to up front make sure that we engage with you, have or suss out any questions that you may have, and if there are any outstanding elements or aspects that we follow up either in memorandum or the next time that we see you. So we have several of those, followed by your roll call, and I don't know that there's a closed session position for today. Mayor, before we move into reconciliation, I thought if anything, I'd highlight two things to you and your peers, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
I want to make you and the public aware of two exciting opportunities in the coming weeks as we move forward towards completion of the Riverfront Park. First, on Monday, April 14th, we have the opportunity to witness the raising of the first steel structures of the Riverfront Park Amphitheater. We will send you details via email this week, but hope you will plan to join us on Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. to celebrate this monumental moment. Two things, monumental moment, right? And following that, please save the date for the opening of the Kiwanis Centennial Riverfront Park Playground on Friday, May 2nd. Again, at 3 p.m., we will cut the ribbon and host the first play at the new playground. Huge thanks to the Kiwanis Club of Lynchburg for their partnership and support for bringing this project to fruition. The first in downtown Lynchburg. Additional details and invitation to follow, but hope you will save those dates and come out and play. So really, really exciting things. If you haven't seen the physical structures that are down there, they're going to be tremendously impactful. I'm not just talking about the swings. I'm talking about the structures that are there. The kids, to me, would the same type of thing. So very, very exciting. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Mayor, to engage you on those two things. And if you like, sir, I'll move right into budget reconciliation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, I'm going to call Chief Greg Wormser to the table to engage us on the fire department. We've had some questions over the last several weeks that come up in public comment. Maybe you've seen on social media or other things about our fire department. I thought if important today that Chief Wormser would have a chance to respond and give us a kind of an update on where we are. So with that, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Chief Wormser.
Chief.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of City Council. As the fire chief, I represent all of the employees at the fire department, and the questions that you have are oftentimes the only ones that I can answer. First, I want to give you an update about our pharmacy operations as we move forward. I'm happy to report that we've been going for more than a week now with our new pharmacy operations, and that has been seamless. Our team that had developed the process and then the subsequent employees that have been part of learning new processes and procedures have been nothing more than remarkable in their patience as we move forward with this meaningful project. And I'm happy to report that we are no longer relying on Centra for any drug box exchange. My conversation to you and update with you today is about three main pillars. It's about our people, about our equipment, and about our facilities. Our people are happy at work, and they're happy to serve. Our equipment is some of the best money can buy, and our facilities are safe. They wouldn't be working there if they were not. And I'm super excited about the new fire station, which we'll talk about here in just a few moments, along with the work that can be done in our existing stations. Some of the finer points that we talk about today may be a little bit technical, so I'm certainly open to any questions, but I want to be here to make sure I set the record straight and clear the air. So I want to talk about the historic investments that have happened in our city, and specifically to the fire department since the city manager, Winter Bender, has arrived. In fiscal year 2018, when I took over as fire chief, our budget was $15.8 million. That was 7% of the city's overall budget. Fast forward to fiscal year 2025, the year that we're in, and our fire department budget is $25.1 million, or 10.5% of the city's overall budget. And that historic investment vastly goes to our most valuable asset we have, and our most important, our people. Our workforce is our top priority. They matter the most. The average firefighter pay over the last 4 years has increased more than 40%, from just over $44,500 to just under $63,000. The average master firefighter pay, our first line promotion, has increased over that same time period by more than 42%, from just under $53,000 to just over $75,700. Furthermore, our starting salary has increased by 25% over that same time period, from $38,001 to just over $47,500. And what's so meaningful about this is when the city manager first arrived, our pay was at the bottom of the totem pole, frankly, for our region. And we've been able to be more competitive there as far as starting pay goes. And I'm super thankful for that, as is our team. In addition, what we really have realized is the fact that moving forward, we have greater opportunities in our city for our workforce. And we have pay progression that is not afforded in other localities, which we'll talk about here next. So as part of this revision to our compensation philosophy, we moved to a step pay plan, which you see here. This increased transparency. It moved us from a position where people in our workforce were getting paid by percentages, and it was only based on their promotion. So now we have an increased transparency. We have a targeted approach to a more consistent progression as people move through the ranks. And it's all based on where you are in tenure and where you are in rank. More importantly, this built the flexibility for us for the future. Our city is growing. Our fire department is growing, and that matters. And so we wanted to create some opportunities where we had none to build in that progression. So you will see ranks that exist that haven't come to fruition yet, but they will in the near future as our department continues to grow. And so we went from more than 100 pay points where people of the same rank and tenure may not have been paid the same to just under 80 pay points, where everybody knows exactly where they're supposed to be at any given point in their career. And it gave them progression opportunities where there were very limited. You know, investing in our people isn't just about money. There are other things that come into play. In 2018, when I became the chief, we were conducting just over 7,000 hours of training every year. You fast forward that to 2024, and in our annual report that will come out in the very near future, we recorded more than 36,000 hours in training. And why is that impactful? Why is that important? Well, it's important because our workforce is younger, and we need to make sure they're trained to do the job that they signed up to do and that our citizens expect of them. And so, on average, our employees spend 204 hours each year in training. That's just regular, everyday training while they're at work, at least 2 hours a day, in addition to all of their other duties. That matters to them. Some other things that matter to them. We completely fund paramedic school. So we pay for their paramedic school lock, stock, and barrel at Central Virginia Community College when they sign a contract with us. That means that they are out of pocket, no expenses, right? And so that means something to them. Furthermore, when they graduate successfully, they have achieved a 2-year associate's degree, and they're eligible for pay progression because they've achieved a new rank as a paramedic. And so they're out of pocket, $0, they get a raise. On top of that, they're eligible for the next 2 promotions in our fire department if they meet the other minimum requirements. So we have laid the foundation for them to be successful. Some of the other intangibles. No longer is mental health taboo in our department. We talk about mental health regularly. Our folks see and encounter things every day that they just shouldn't see and encounter. We have obviously strong EAP services, but more importantly, we have chaplain services. We have impact living services for our community through our community partners at Impact Living, who provide counseling services by a certified counselor, 6 free sessions for all of our employees annually. Finally, we have our athletic trainer, who one would argue is probably one of our most well-liked employees, even though he brings the pain when he has our folks in the gym. He works out with our staff. He makes sure they're physically fit. He helps them with their dietary needs. And more importantly, last year, he put us in a position where our employees saved more than $70,000 in co-pays, and the city saved more than $150,000 in workers' compensation costs. So let's talk for a few minutes about our equipment. I assure you, again, our equipment is the best money can buy. And you've heard in other presentations about our replacement plan and maintenance agreements that we have with our apparatus. And so when we look at that, I'm also going to share with you that we have other equipment that has similar projects and similar processes. So some of our other equipment includes boats, gas monitors for hazardous material spills, hydraulic tools, or some people would call them the jaws of life, ultrasound, thermal imaging cameras, drones, and striker equipment. There's many other pieces of equipment. These are some of our most expensive capitalized equipment that we operate and maintain every single day. Specifically as it relates to the striker plan, it encompasses our cardiac monitors, our stretchers, our stair chairs, and our compression devices. I'm happy to report that none of those devices are out of service. They all work. They all provide service every day to the citizens. The vast majority of them are under a maintenance agreement. And so when repairs are needed, we have technicians that come that represent Stryker. They come to our facility and repair those pieces of equipment. As a matter of fact, that group will be here later this month to do their annual maintenance on all of our equipment. And as you know, doing that maintenance and having those types of agreements really is about fiscal responsibility because it ensures that we're saving money and we're making sure the equipment meets or exceeds its useful life. So let's talk about our buildings. And again, I reiterate, our buildings are safe. If they weren't, our firefighters wouldn't be in them. We'd be doing something different. So I want to reassure everybody here that our buildings are safe. I'm most excited about the fact that Station 9 is gonna happen. That makes me so excited. We've been working on it for years, and thanks to the city manager and Liberty University for their public-private partnership, that is becoming a reality. As a matter of fact, dirt is being moved as we speak at the site. Trees have been knocked down. And we're ready to move forward with a groundbreaking later on in the spring, hopefully sometime in May. You can see here the latest rendering of what that station looks like. We also show you a map of where the other 8 fire stations are located in the city. And why this is so important is this is the flagship fire station. This is what is going to make us better because we're going to take what we learned from this fire station and its construction in modern practices and be able to translate that over into our existing facilities. So let's talk a little bit, spend a few minutes on this slide about our existing facilities. We did a facilities modernization study that was through Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson. I'll refer to them as SEH here on out because it's just easier. I get tongue-tied. So SEH came in and helped us with a study. Lo and behold, after they came and visited with our staff and conducted an evaluation of all 8 stations, Liberty University came forward and said, "Oh, have you ever heard of this group SEH? We're going to have them build your new fire station." That's great. They were already familiar with our service. They were already familiar with our system, and we were ready to move forward. That's why it's so important that we use what we learned from them and from our employees in the new fire station in order to build and revitalize the stations in the future. So they evaluated all 8 stations. They included some third-party evaluations with structural engineers in some areas. But most importantly, they did massive amounts of staff engagement because that mattered to us. We wanted them to talk to the people in the stations who were doing the work every day. That's what matters the most. Again, I led off with our people. I'm happy to report that my belief was we should base that on 3 factors that you see here, cardiac impact, human factors, and cancer risk reduction, and our staff agreed. They agreed that those 3 elements were the most critical and important for them. So I thought I'd take a moment to walk through why this matters. They were able to touch new furnishings. They were able to see what a modern fire station is going to look like, the first purposefully built station in more than 35 years. And to see the joy in their eyes and the importance of that to them, that's what recruitment and retention looks like. So the cardiac impact. We're looking at updated lighting systems. We're looking at integrated dispatch systems. Because when that call comes in for service and you jump all of a sudden, it hurts your heart. And you have to act. So we want to minimize that in every way possible. And so we're looking at how we can improve our cardiac impact. We're also looking at how we can improve the human factors. So human factors are how men and women are sleeping together in the same spaces, men and women are using the restrooms together in the same spaces, and we need to get away from that. As part of our accreditation, that is very, very important to us. And this modernization will help us do that. Ironically, Station 6 at Miller Park, our oldest fire station, is the one where the facilities are separated already because we were able to accomplish that task some time ago. This separation of spaces also includes some spaces for privacy. When our folks are here 24 hours a day and they want to have a conversation with their loved one privately over the telephone. It also addresses improved response times so that we're realigning common areas with spaces where they're going to go out to the vehicles to go on that call. And then finally, it gives them an opportunity for more training and more space where they can do their work every day. As far as cancer risk reduction goes, that's pretty important to us. A number of our firefighters over the years have been diagnosed with cancer. It's very near and dear to my heart. As you know, we had a firefighter last year who died of occupational brain cancer. Our firefighters are 14% more likely to die from cancer than the average citizen. And it's because of the things we're exposed to while we're at work fighting fire. I want to repeat that. It's because of the things we're exposed to while we're at work fighting fire. There's all sorts of studies out there about that. That's why cancer risk reduction is so important to us, is because we've had a number of our firefighters affected by it and their families. We want to move turnout gear out of the living spaces. In some of our fire stations, we have turnout gear. After they come back, it's dirty. It's all got all that products of combustion all over it, and it's in their living space. We want to remove that. We want to have proper decon areas, which we currently don't have. And more importantly, we want to have air systems that prevent air movement from the contaminated area to the common area, so that we have clean living spaces and places where our folks can be comfortable and happy with the work they do every day. In closing, I'm incredibly proud of our team and where we have come from and where we are today. I know we have work to do and we'll continue those efforts, but it's always going to be based on our people first, our equipment and our facilities second. I am proud to be the chief of this incredible team, and it is my responsibility and commitment to this city to help us with our continued growth. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion for for the chief? Marty?
How are you, Mr. Mayor?
I'm fine.
I just got some questions. Thank you, Chief, for that presentation. Sorry I missed the beginning of it. I didn't even see this on the agenda, so I'm assuming this got added to the agenda kind of last minute. Is that correct?
No, it's all under budget reconciliation.
Oh, it's all under budget reconciliation?
Yeah,
Got it.
these are all questions that have been posed by you and your
Perfect.
peers or during public comment. So these are the things that we address throughout the budget process.
Got it. Thank you, sir. So just a couple questions. One is, you mentioned that striker equipment. If we could go back and take a look at that slide that shows the equipment. And do you know how much of the striker equipment is beyond its service life?
I can tell you that no, not all of it. I can tell you none of the stretchers are beyond its service life, and none of the stair chairs are beyond its service life.
And what's the basis of that? What's the service life on it? Do you know how many years?
The stretchers I know is 15 years.
15 years on the stretchers? And who is putting that number on them?
Stryker, I would assume.
You would assume, or you know?
Stryker, I would
Because I've
assume.
got documentation from Stryker here that says that 7+ years is past service life, and that 51 pieces of equipment between stretchers, power loads, stair pros, life packs, and Lucas devices are beyond their service life. And I got this from Stryker themselves. So I'm just trying, how do we reconcile? Stryker says 51 pieces of the equipment are beyond its service life, but you just said none of it's beyond its service life. How do we reconcile?
No, I
that?
said most of it wasn't beyond the service life. Specifically, I mentioned stretchers were not beyond their service life.
They're saying that 11 stretchers are beyond its service life, that we have 11 stretchers that are 7+ years old. Is that accurate?
Oh, that's not accurate by my estimation, so no.
So why would Stryker say that 11 stretchers are more than 7 years old?
I have no idea. I can't speak for Stryker.
Okay.
So it may be helpful, Mr. Mitchell, it's okay. Whatever information that you have, would you please share that with our fire chief so as to ensure that we reconcile the two?
Sure.
We've got a
And
contract with
Pretty,
them. Be helpful.
pretty certain that this has been provided, and I'll make sure that this gets provided to the fire chief without a doubt. So that's one question I have. Another question that I have for you is, do you know if our turnout gear, right? So let me back up a second. I think it's pretty commonly known, we've talked about it with Tim Mitchell and some other people, that PFAS is something that causes cancer, right? Turnout gear has PFAS in it, correct? Is that accurate?
Yes, some turnout gear does have PFAS in it.
The turnout gear that our firefighters are wearing right now, does it have PFAS in it?
I'm sure some of it does, yes.
Some of it does. How much? Most of it, or?
I don't track turnout gear specifically, what years we have and that sort of thing, so we have 2 sets for every employee.
Because when we're talking about cancer risk reduction as a priority, I would feel that getting rid of the PFAS in the turnout gear, because I feel like, I'm pretty sure PFAS-free turnout gear is a fairly new piece of technology. Is that accurate?
Yeah, PFAS, if you said PFAS-free turnout gear is new technology, you are correct.
So if that's new technology, then it's probably accurate to say that most of our turnout gear probably has PFAS in it,
Sure.
except for maybe some brand new stuff. Have we purchased any PFAS-free turnout gear? Do we know?
We are trying several sets of turnout gear currently in our department.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're PFAS-free or not.
All right,
as I stated
fantastic.
previously.
So if cancer risk reduction is a priority for our firefighters, I think that it's important to acknowledge that we need to get on some sort of replacement plan to get this turnout gear that has PFAS in it out of circulation. Because, yes, studies do show that the things that we come in contact with in fires cause cancer for firefighters. Absolutely. There's also studies out there that show that PFAS causes cancer. There's also studies out there that show that asbestos causes cancer. Do you know of any time where any flooring material in any of the fire stations was tested for asbestos?
Yeah, in 2019, we had some flooring tested by OSHA, as a matter of fact, in the Department of Labor and Industry. And that report, as I understand it, came back where it was less than 2% of the glue that was used on the tile floor had asbestos in it. It's called mastic.
Sure.
And in this particular case, they reported that that was certainly well within safe limits, so long as you weren't eating or licking the tiles.
Okay, so,
And
Glad
also
we
a
don't have
common
people-
building
glad-
practice of that time.
sure, and I'm glad we don't have people licking tiles. Did we ever have requests in to encapsulate these floors that had this mastic that could contain asbestos put in for any of these fire stations?
Yeah, we've replaced floors in the stations
But we hadn't-
and moved through. There are only a couple of stations that have not had the floors replaced yet.
Which stations haven't had the floors replaced?
I believe it was Station 1 and Station 8.
Station 1 and Station 8? That sounds right from what I remember. Where are we at on the schedule of getting the floors encapsulated or replaced in those stations to get rid of the, basically seal up the old stuff?
I don't have that information in front
You
of
don't
me.
have that information? All right, I think that would be something important to know. And then the last question that I have, how many have graduated the medic school?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Less than 10, more than 10?
Over what time period?
I think there was a slide you had here earlier about the medic school.
Yeah,
Completely funded paramedic school. Can we get a number on how many people have been, I guess, accepted into that program through the fire department? And then how many have actually graduated that program, completed that program, and
Sure.
gotten their certifications? Not graduated, but gotten their certifications.
sure.
And then it would probably also be helpful to get a number of people that dropped out if that happened. But those are just some good questions to have. And I think that, and I thank you for what you're doing, right? And I really appreciate the hard work you've put into everything you've done since I've been here the last 2 years. You have been trying to move the needle, and I really appreciate that. And I want you to know that I am your biggest advocate to help move the needle, to invest in your workforce, right? And to protect our firefighters and to protect our citizens with our fire department. So whatever I can do to help you, I'm here to do it. I'd like to reconcile that stuff with the striker equipment, not trying to put you on the spot. I know you have a boss too, right? And, I'm speaking, I have the floor. And, you know, it's a pretty big budget investment if we were to look at doing what I think we need to do as somebody that used to work on the striker equipment and from the equipment that I've seen to do the striker plan. So I can see how that would, you know, potentially garner some concern out of City Hall. And I just want you to know I'm 100% behind you. I'd like to reconcile these numbers because I don't know of anywhere where a PowerPro XT is lasting 15 years and still functioning the way it should be. So I'd like to see that information and reconcile these numbers, and I'll make sure you get that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may address, Mr. Commissioner, I hope that anything, the inference that I'm making from that, and you have a boss too, I hope that I have this incorrect, that there be some disconnect between Greg and myself, because there isn't. I'm taking his recommendation on how best to invest in the fire department. I'm not a firefighter. I don't know how to run a fire department. That's why I have the best fire chief in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So for him, he's going to give me the recommendation about how best to invest the funds. There is not anything that I'm precluding or limiting or impeding him from doing. In fact, leaned in, and this was a part that you missed, as part of the opportunity. When I arrived, we pivoted from an investment with Liberty to an investment in the library to an investment in a fire station. I knew that we needed that. I know that you're a big advocate for it. And we've also positioned equipment ahead of time because it takes 48 years to get some of this equipment, which, you know, good golly, right?
Did you say 48?
48 years.
48 or 428?
Yes.
Which one?
All,
Yes.
all the
All
above.
the above.
All the above. I don't think that's where you were headed, but I wanted, if anything, to kind of go back to.
Objective statement.
Right, and so for me,
Objective
to make
statement.
it more particular and specific, I want to make it clear, there's no separation between he and I. And I'm taking his guidance and all the people for whom that work for him on how best to make that investment. And some of the things that you see, and if you go back to the first slide, is before I arrived and when I've been here, is the investment that we've made. And I really want to thank City Council for taking some of my recommendations on how best to move the fire department in our city forward. And I make sure that we do have the best people, the best equipment, and the best buildings necessary to ensure that we have the best doggone fire department in the Commonwealth of Virginia, because that's what I'm leaning into. So if anything, I just want to thank you for making the objective statement. I just want to be specific. There's no disconnect. I'm taking his recommendation because he's moving us forward.
You just made me think of one other question. I appreciate that, Mr. City Manager.
You know,
I was.
The Lifeline Gold, Lifeline Silver, the AHA, is that right? The awards we were getting previously
yeah,
for
the previous
resuscitation?
awards we'd received, sure.
Where are we at now?
That's something we haven't been monitoring, frankly. We haven't sought out an AHA award in some time. No particular reason other than we've had other more important work to do.
Because I know in the past that we were always recognized about how aggressive our EMS system was and how effective we were at producing quality outcomes for patients, especially when they're, you know, cardiac arrest, right? So I'd like to know what's the difference in outcomes then and now? Why are we not pursuing that anymore? Because we were getting gold, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't recall.
And then I think it went down to silver.
Yeah, so I appreciate the comment. I don't measure our successes based on what awards we get. I base our successes on many other factors, not the least of which is accreditation, ISO, and the things that matter, because they also grade us, if you will,
Sure.
on the same things.
They grade us on the same.
AHA grades us solely on cardiac and sometimes stroke, as I recall. But you know, awards like that, while certainly meaningful, don't tell all of the story. And I think the bigger story here is that those awards don't matter as much when we are providing the right service and when we are internationally accredited and have achieved higher honors.
So, and I think just to make sure you understand the context, I'm asking the question based on outcomes, right? So if outcomes determined gold, and then outcomes became silver, and then outcomes are becoming whatever they are now, I don't know. I do want to make sure, because we had, when I was at Lynchburg Fire Department, we were the best of the best at cardiac arrest, MIs, heart attacks.
Make no mistake,
stroke. We were the best of the best. And
We're
I want
still
to
the
make
best
sure
of
we're
the
still
best.
pursuing being the best of the best.
we are still the best of the best.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the chief? Ms. Reed? Ms. Reed?
So I appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much for being here. It was very thorough. I appreciate you saying that the facilities are safe. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there that I think was good for you to clarify, especially with the flooring situation. So just let me regurgitate what I think I heard you say so that, especially since the press is here, they can regurgitate it properly since you are the chief of the fire department. So a 2% positive for asbestos in the glue. Now, I'm no expert, but from what I understand about asbestos is as long as you leave it alone and you don't irritate it and, if you're pulling it apart or ripping it apart, if it's in a wall or floor or whatever it is, as long as you leave it alone, it is not a great danger to your health. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if it's in the glue in the floor, unless you guys were tearing the flooring up, it is safe to leave alone until it was time to replace the flooring. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you have two stations that currently that floor is intact, in place, where you had the positive for the low positive levels in the glue until we can get to replacing those floors.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would guess also that because you're the chief of our fire department and that you're an intelligent man, that if there was a risk factor for any type of asbestos exposure, that you would have immediately alerted our extremely intelligent city manager and said, hey, this is a safety issue, at which time our city manager would have said, yes, that is, and if needed, we would have approved or been notified as a city council. And if needed, we would have not even needed to be in a budget cycle to have then be asked to move money from our contingency funds. That's probably where that money would have come from. Is that correct, Mr. Benda?
If that were the scenario, the hypothetical, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So none of that has happened, however. We're not in an emergency situation where asbestos is being exposed, where it's a danger for anybody in either one of those stations to be around.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that for everyone in the room who's listening. If we're doing a story on that, we're all good. Perfect. Also, Mr. Benda, in the last 2 years' budget cycles and this year, has anyone on this council before, let's say, the last few weeks, come to you and asked you about said floors or the gear that contains these PFAs that could cause cancer? Has anybody asked you about that?
New technology.
I get several questions. I know that Mr. Missions has asked me several about the fire department, so have many of you, right? And you've heard public comment. The requests about the equipment and/or the floors, I'd have to go search, but certainly I think about the floors was at least a question that was posed. I don't know, I don't know about the turnout gear.
In our meetings with you, when we sit down with you before the budget cycle starts, was there, and as far as the public safety, because we talk about, where we want funding, you meet with all of us and say, hey, the beginning of the budget cycle, Mrs. Reed, where would you like to focus? We all have these conversations on where we're going to put our money, what's your big focus on this coming budget. We have those conversations. We specify with you where our concerns are. Has anyone on this council in the last 2 years or this current year, in the beginning of this conversation, as you recall, said specifically, I'm extremely concerned about the flooring in any of our stations because of asbestos, or the gear that our firefighters are wearing at the beginning of the budget cycle, and I want it replaced, and I want you to earmark money for that you recall?
There's 7 of you, and it's the last 2 years, and our meetings are chock full, and I'm leaning on both Greg and Donna. Does not immediately come to mind that specificity, but again, that's 2 years, it's 14 different people.
Okay, I would love to find that information out. If you could
Yes.
maybe, or I could FOIA it, but I would love to see.
There's nothing that immediately comes to mind as specific as that you outline it, Mrs. Reed. Do you recall anything that specific in the last 2 years?
I think in a lot of the budget one-on-ones, there's a lot of conversation around public safety generally and support for public safety.
But not specifically about cancer causing, funding for anything causing cancer that you recall.
So I don't recall anything that specific, but again, these are all conversations.
Sure,
So
sure,
there's
sure.
not going to be anything
I
necessarily.
mean, I can look into it. I'm just asking. Okay, cool, cool. Next, chief. So, I hate to even mention this, but you brought it up, and it's been publicly put out on a Facebook post. Andrew Jenks. So you stated, obviously, for those who don't know who are watching, lost his battle with cancer last year, one of your firefighters. Occupational brain cancer was the diagnosis, so it was a service-related cancer. Left behind a wife and a son, and a devastated family and a grieving fire department family, and we are all so sorry for the loss. Was not related to the flooring in either station.
This might be the most insensitive thing I've ever heard in a council meeting.
Marty, Ms. Reed has.
So let me read.
I understand.
A
But I'm not going to let
post.
her use Andy Jenks like that.
So let me read a post off of Mr. or Miss Jen's page that I have been approached about by representatives for Mr. Jenks' family who are extremely angry over a politicized post, who asked me to address it, Mr. Mischens, because they're disgusted by your politicization of their son, spouse, father, and friend.
It's a FOIA request for those communications right now.
There would be nothing for me to turn over.
She's lying.
There will be nothing for me to turn over, and I'm not lying. So here's the post.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
It's getting out of control.
Here's the post.
Mr. Chairman,
What's the
point of order.
I have the
In
floor,
council
and I
rule-
can read this.
Point of order.
I
as
can read this.
precedence.
Read your rules of procedure.
Precedence comes from the rules of council. And the rules of council are very clear that when a council member addresses fellow council members, it's supposed to be in the terms of a specific question. And I hear a lot of things that aren't a specific question.
I'm not addressing him, I'm addressing our chief.
Okay, but still, either way, whether you're addressing each other or the people that have done the presentation, the question is in order, so I'm hoping that to hold to our council rules, we will get to a question here soon.
I will get to a question, thank you.
Continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief. I would like to extend, first of all, apologies to the staff who was offended by the post, the family members that were offended by the post. That was misused and misrepresented. Their voices were heard. I guess my question would be, at any time, were there concerns from your fire department, any staff in your fire department, that anything was unsafe about anything in your stations that caused them grave concern for their safety?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wilder.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for the work you do for our citizens. It's amazing the conditions our employees have to work with. I mean, not just fire, police, I mean, utility workers. Again, I don't care what the weather's like, or what the conditions are, whether it's snowing, whether it's sleeting, whatever the case may be, 2 o'clock in the morning, our city staff was out there every night. So I appreciate all the work y'all do. I'm so glad to see that since 2018, we've increased over $10 million in less than 10 years investment in the fire station, in fire department. Probably more so in our police department. I must notice that's the less increase in our school system, but at least we're spending some more funds in our police department and a beautiful new station, and we have a beautiful new fire department coming forward. So I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we don't see the same results for our school system, but we're thankful. But again, when we're doing a city budget, we have to look at all the needs of our community and not just one department. So we have to balance all those needs. And I want to remind our citizens that when it comes time to looking at the budget and also talk about the real estate rate and so many other rates, we have so many needs. Whether I was on the school board or whether I'm in city council, school board 9 years, city council 8, 9 years, or whatever the case may be, there's never enough money to do all we need to do. Again, on the school board, when I was on there, it was a plan to renovate or rebuild Sandusky. That was 10, 15 years ago. That has never happened. So again, because we just did not have the funds, we did not have the money. So when you look at all the needs of our community, I got an email today about some part of the highway that was cracking or whatever, whether it was a city problem or a state problem or a VDOT problem, not sure. But again, there's never enough funds to do all we need to do. So I'm so thankful for the city team being prudent with the resource that we have. And I applaud our county staff for trying to balance all of this and while maintaining a strong accreditation rating, a bond rating, and maintaining all those things where you're trying to get all the voices, while you're trying to listen to all of this, all of that, and try to balance everything, whether it's a pool or a library or a school situation, you're trying to balance everything. So I want to commend the staff for doing that and doing with grace and doing with elegance and doing with, regardless of all you want to make everybody happy. You can't make, that's my big, as a side note, one thing, I'm a people pleaser. And that was my biggest problem. It was trying to please everybody. You would go crazy trying to please everybody. So I'm so thankful, and I continue to pray for you, that you do your best. And I'm so thankful that we have a system that is prudent with our city resources. I have faith in the work you're doing, and I'm so thankful for that. And I commend you doing this budget process and what we're doing for our community. And I've seen, again, the increases over $10 million in our fire department. And I know a fire person was injured in the fire last week. I pray that person is doing better. But again, every day their lives are on the line. Police, our city workers, their lives, foster care, social workers, their lives are on the line every single day, and they do it because they love their jobs. They love their people. They love to serve. That's their purpose. So I appreciate that. Again, I was about to tell the city again, thank you, because it's a balancing of all the needs of our citizens. That's what, again, last point, I remind our citizens there are so many needs in our community, from schools to fire departments to pay for this one, to pay for that one. This needs for old equipment here, that, whatever the case may be. I'm sure you would like to replace everything possible, but you don't have the resources or the finances to do that. So as a manager, you got to see what we can do, what we can do here, how we can do this, and make sure, again, everyone is safe, but looking strategically how we can do all of this. So I know as a challenge with all of our staff. So I appreciate the work, I appreciate the presentation, and thank you for your service to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mission?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your comments, Dr. Wilder. Thank you for
Yes,
that.
sir.
So a couple things, just to kind of redirect on some of these items. And this is probably more for you, Mr. City Manager, and maybe Ms. Witt, and I feel the fire chief may be able to chime in. So in the fiscal year 2024 budget that we adopted in the CIP, there was about, looks like $132,500 allocated for Station 8 and one of the items that it includes on there is update floors. Now, it's my understanding that that was not done. Is that correct? The floors were not?
That is my understanding. That's not been done yet. That's
So,
correct.
so this was fiscal year 2024, we're now in 25 and moving into 26. So I'd like a complete audit of those $132,500 that have been appropriated to do those upgrades at Station 8. Naturally, I wouldn't ask these questions about encapsulating that floor had I thought it was already being done, right? So now, we're a year past that, and, matter of fact, this would be actually 2 years from the point that we adopted the FY '24 budget, about several months shy of that. So I'd like to know where those dollars went and how they were applied, since that is the budget that we did adopt. And then second, I did, Mr. City Manager, email you on March 25th and said, and I'm reading it right now, we need to move up the station floor capsulation before your time. I personally had that tile, and I said treated, but it was supposed to be tested for asbestos at Station 8, and it came back positive. That was on March 25th. You didn't respond to this email until almost a week later. So earlier in this budget process, I did address that with you and ask you to
And I said,
move that
she
up.
asked two different things, and Mr. Missions was about both the turnout equipment and also the floors. And absolutely, you did ask about the floors and the encapsulation and the process for it. Yes, it
Sure.
was, and we're in the middle of the budget, trying to do my best to stay abreast
Absolutely.
of all the different
Understand.
questions and what have you. And so all the information that you asked for today, and plus that as well.
Trying to remain objective and not
of-
emotional. And I think that we serve our citizens best when we operate that way.
Yeah.
And as you said, when I asked it, how new is this technology for the PFAS-free turnout gear?
Really new? I'm not an expert in, as one might imagine. I'm an expert in other things,
She called
but
you
certainly
an
not in whether, how much is in turnout gear. As a matter of fact, there are plenty of studies out there that say, yeah, it's in turnout gear, but we don't really know how it affects our firefighters at this point. I also don't know what manufacturers are out there that manufacture non-PFAS turnout gear.
But it is new tech, this, being able to purchase PFAS-free turnout gear is new technology, correct?
Yes, new, very
So,
new.
Again, that's something I found out about during this budget process, I would say probably within the last 2 or 3 weeks, that this is something that's now available for us. And are we testing that right now? Is that correct?
No, what I said was we are testing new turnout gear.
Okay. All right. Do we know if that's PFAS-free or PFAS-free?
As I said earlier, I do not
sure.
know whether that is PFAS-free.
That would be something worth looking into. So there's no way I could have known to advocate for something I didn't know existed.
Understood.
Right, until sometime in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But in regard to the striker equipment, I stand firm on that. I think we need to look at ensuring that our citizens are being served with the best of the best that's out there. Because I think in some of these images you're showing the Life Pack 15. Is there anything different out there now?
Sure.
What is it?
Life Pack something else.
Is it
Could be
35
16.
sound right?
Yeah, it could
Life
be
Pack
35, 45, I don't, yeah.
I think
There's
it's
another
Life Pack
model
35.
out.
And it's got a lot more capabilities from what I understand than what we currently have. So number one thing, protecting our citizens, right? And I know you know that. I know you said number one on there was invested in your workforce, but I know number one for you in your heart is making sure our citizens are safe.
And that starts with our workforce.
And they're the ones that do it, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Mr. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Chief Wormser. I appreciate it. We were all reminded in the last few days of the importance of our firemen with the fire that happened in Ward 3, the ward I represent. And that actually took place next to a former councilman's home. So I got firsthand view of some of that as it was happening and watched the men at work. And we appreciate what they do. And we're reminded when we see that's, those response times and that there are lives involved in this. And as the leader of our fire department, it's incumbent upon you to make sure we are the best. And I love hearing that's our common goal. Everybody agrees on that. I had a quick question and then a few other comments, but on the maintenance plan on the striker equipment that you spoke of, you talked about how most of the equipment is covered. I'm a big proponent of maintenance plans. I think they're cost efficient and I think they do provide for new equipment refurbishment and even retiring the old equipment properly. My father was carried down out of our home in one of the stair climbers, and whether it's 7 years or 15 years, I'm curious about that as well. But you said most of the equipment, and I'm curious, the equipment that's not covered by maintenance agreements, what would you do if some of that equipment had problems?
So, excuse me, the team that services that equipment will be here later this month, and that equipment historically, they service anyways, and we just pay for that out of pocket. And I previously reported in a council memo a couple weeks ago, I don't remember the exact details off the top of my head, but somewhere around $160,000 is what we paid for last year between the maintenance agreement and things that we had to fix that were outside of the maintenance agreement. So things that needed to be replaced, repaired, or what have you, when the vendor was here to do that work. So again, the reiteration here is that we don't have anything that doesn't work. All of our equipment works. And if and when the technicians are here to service that equipment, if something needs to be repaired, that repair happens. We have money in our budget to make those repairs.
Okay, appreciate the answer to that. The only other comment I'd have, Mr. Mayor, is that I want to make sure that the firefighters know we do hear them. We heard them in front of council. We appreciate our firefighters, and I want to make sure they understand that we are listening to them as well. It's always management and frontline employees issues always with these things, and but the firefighters are in our hearts, and we pray for them every day, and we thank you for your work leading them. So just like to say that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chief. And I pray that all be well with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Mayor, moving on. Vice Mayor Deemer was the one for this next request. Again, this is in reference to questions that have been posed. One is, what buildings do we own? What are currently occupied? Where are they? Are they, and I don't want to steal the thunder here, but who knew that 1517 Jackson Street was previously Opportunity, what was the name? Opportunity House. And it ceased being used as that resource, I think in 2017, thereabouts. And so one of the things that we found out was we own a building on 1517 Jackson, and which was a part of this review. So I've stole a bit of Sean's thunder. Sean, you know Sean from our retreat. He's a data champion, and dare I say, really good at it. So Sean's going to give you a presentation on Vice Mayor Deemer and some of you who would ask questions about the buildings we own and how do we, where they are and what they do. So here we go.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yep, so I'm here tonight to give you an overview of the structure inventory and where we are in the process. So just a little bit of background on what we've done so far is there's 2 existing inventories in the city. One of them is our work management system. So this is where we keep our work orders and we track the work that's done against our city assets, anywhere from water resources to public works to facilities. Then we also have an inventory in our GIS and our mapping system, which is kind of just shows you the location of where our buildings are in our GIS system and throughout the city. So we had a couple of goals while we were going through this project. One was to consolidate and review those 2 existing inventories. Those 2 systems talk to each other, but we just wanted to make sure that they were in sync and up to date and had similar information in them. But we also wanted to review some of the information about each one of our structures. What fund is responsible for that building ultimately, whether that's the general fund or an enterprise fund? What type of structure is that structure? What's its primary use? And then also, what facility type does it exist on? So is it a wastewater treatment plant structure? Is it a structure at one of our parks facility or our public works or our fire safety facilities? And we also, during this process, want to take a look at any vacant or underutilized structure, as the city manager pointed out, and take inventory and note of those and discuss those as a team. So just a general overview of some of the high-level numbers in our inventory is the general fund has about 180 structures. And then the rest of the funds, the enterprise funds, we have water and sewer and storm sitting about 80, airport at 29, and schools at 72, so a total of 362 structures throughout the city. So for the purpose of this initial phase of the project and for this presentation, we really wanted to focus on the general fund buildings. That's where we set our priority, and that's kind of what we're going to be discussing throughout the rest of the presentation. Hopefully, as time allows, we'll be able to give the same level of detail and effort to the enterprise fund structures, but going forward, we're just going to speak to the general fund. So in the general fund, there's 180 structures, and we broke those out by type. And so we have 112 buildings. These are your traditional buildings, 4 walls, permanent structure, and a roof. We also have a lot of pavilions and canopies. Those are popular through our parks and recreation facilities, but also at our fuel sites. And you see a picture of one on the upper left of the map. We also have a lot of sheds that we use for storage. You can think of those as your typical garden sheds, your 8x10 sheds that are not permanent structures, but they still serve a purpose. And then our open bay garages, there's an example of one in the upper right. That's kind of a 3-walled structure, typically used for storing of equipment or vehicles. We kind of have a general other category that's kind of a catch-all. So in there's a greenhouse and one of the structures at our fire training facility. And of course, parking decks and the elevator. And so it's important to note here that even though about 70 of the structures are not buildings, they still require year-round maintenance and a lot of dedicated staff and expertise to maintain those structures. And so we asked Public Works how many folks maintain and are dedicated to maintaining these structures. And we got a pretty good summary. There's one master mechanical technician, so think HVAC. There's 2 master plumbers, 1 master electrician, 1 carpenter and locksmith, and then there's a team of about 14 building mechanics that are responsible for maintaining all those 180 structures. And then it just so happened that I ran into one of those folks yesterday on my way into work, and we had a conversation about this project and the inventory. And I asked him, just by chance, how many buildings are you responsible for? And he's the primary lead on 15 buildings. And they're not just the small buildings. It's City Hall, it's Human Services, it's the building across the street, Monument Terrace, and the elevator. And then later that day, we looked out the window, and he was out there with an elevator technician repairing the elevator and working with them. So there's a lot of really dedicated, specialized folks who maintain these 180 structures. So
I didn't know, on the previous screen, the dot color, does it signify something?
the font, sorry. Oh, and here, this
No,
is
the colors.
the building types, yeah. And I should have provided a legend with what those colors were.
Okay, can you just tell us what the different colors are?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to.
That's okay. I didn't-
Yeah. It's a little bit difficult.
I didn't want to throw you a monkey
Yeah, I'll
wrench,
put
but I
a
was just
legend
curious.
on there. Yep.
That's fine.
Thank you. So of those 112 structures or buildings, 65 of them we flagged as being conditioned. And we use a pretty loose term for conditioned, and again, this is information that we would like to dive into a little bit more. But for the purpose of this presentation, initial phase of the project, we say condition is anything that has heating or cooling and is occupied on a regular daily basis for providing city services. A really good example of how that doesn't always tell the true story is our fleet services building, because I happened to be down there for a meeting, got lucky enough to be taken on a tour of that facility. And half of that facility is heated and cooled, and that's where the offices and the break room and the facilities are. But where the folks are actually out in the bays working on ambulances and fire trucks and stuff like that, they don't have air conditioning. So that's flagged in here as being conditioned, but in reality, only about 50% of that structure is conditioned. And so we broke out these conditioned buildings by type, and you can see that we have 12 general office buildings, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail on the next slide. We also have neighborhood centers, they're fire stations, flagged the museum buildings, and that number may seem a little bit high, but there are structures at the Old City Cemetery, there's also the Point of Honor facilities, and of course, our beautiful museum at the top of Monument Terrace. Again, we hit on some vacant and expected vacant buildings in here, which we've identified 6 of those. And then you can see a breakout of the other type of buildings that are conditioned throughout the city, whether they're police stations, residential, or community market, city armory type information. So looking at the general office use, you can see a detailed list of what those buildings are, and they cover anywhere from our Public Works facility at 1700 Memorial in the upper left of the map. You can see a picture over there. City Hall, the building that we're occupying here today. The Emergency Communications Call Center out on Candler's Mountain Road, and mild stomping grounds, information technology at off of Young Place. And I will draw attention to Lynchburg Health Department and Virginia Cooperative Extension. We have agreements to them to provide them with office space, those organizations. And one of the things we wanted to do, looking at those buildings, was look at utilization. And it's important to note that for general office use, there is no underutilized structure in that list. They're pretty much all at capacity. And then To highlight the vacant underutilized structures we identified 6 total structures, but they're really only at 5 sites. You'll notice that White Rock is 2 separate structures, but it's considered one facility. Opportunity House, as the city manager pointed out, at 1517 Jackson Street. That's in the image is in the lower right of the map. Virginia Amateur Sports, which is on Lakeside Drive. That's kind of behind the Smoothie King near the Fresh Market Shopping Center. And that's occupied by Virginia Amateur Sports. There's the Old Forest Road commercial building. Some of you may recognize that as the old Meanwhile Back on the Farm building. That building was purchased as part of the 501-221 interchange project and is just being leased out until they need to progress with that project. White Rock School, of course, many of you are familiar with, and then the PD West building, the church building, which is at 805 Court Street, which is currently occupied by LPD, but expected to be vacant when they move into their new headquarters. And with Virginia Amateur Sports, it's a similar situation. It's currently occupied, but they are expected to move back to Roanoke in the near future, and that building would become vacant at that time. And so with that, I want to pass it off to Greg, who's going to give a little bit more information about these vacant structures.
So next slide, please. So Vice Mayor Deemer, I think one of the important reasons for doing this analysis is to identify, hey, do we have space that's being underutilized, right? And can we consolidate some of what we do, free up a building or two and ultimately figure out a way to get that back onto the tax rolls. If we look at general office space that we have, we're really not there, right? We are using our general office space to capacity. There are a couple other sites where we actually do have some opportunity. So first, take a look at Opportunity House, 1517 Jackson Street. That facility has not been occupied since 2016 or 2017. Interestingly enough, it used to be the office of one Mr. Dan Witt, husband of Donna Witt, who ran the Opportunity House and the group home program for the city of Lynchburg years ago. We do recommend considering this site for sale. So we'll work through the process there to figure out how we would put it out to the market and begin to understand what the highest and best use for that facility would be. But we are going to recommend that we consider putting that facility up for sale, get it back on the tax rolls. The Virginia Amateur Sports building, we do expect that building to vacate in 2025. And at that point, we'll probably be in the same situation as we are with Opportunity House, where we will likely consider putting that building up for sale and figuring out how to get the highest and best use out of that facility. It's in a great location, so there's probably would be significant interest there. The facility at Old Forest Road, where Meanwhile Back at the Farm used to be headquartered, that building ultimately is coming down when we proceed with the 501-221 project. So the highest best use there is likely to continue leasing it until which time it needs to come down and then take it down, and it won't be part of this building inventory any longer. Again, the White Rock School, those 2 facilities there, they're part of the approved community hub project, which we are working through. And then the PD West building, as we've discussed with council, we're currently under negotiation there for a potential reuse of that building once it is vacated. But I can tell you, Vice Mayor, this was a great analysis to work through. I think we found out some things that we didn't know, and that's always the benefit of doing this kind of work. As Sean mentioned, I think we will, a couple things that are important here. One, we've now done the work, we've got an inventory, we understand what we understand. We can't just file this away and then revisit it in 10 years and redo all the work the next time a council person asks the question. So we're going to make sure that we build on what Sean has done and make sure that the information that we've gathered, we get in the systems correctly so where people can use this on a day-to-day basis. And then diving a little bit deeper into the other structures that we own and the other funds. We wanted to focus on the general fund because that is where the general tax revenue from the city comes in, and it's where we can impact our taxpayers most and quickest. But that is what we have for you today, and we'd answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Mr. Daly?
Thank you for the presentation again. It's great information, Sean. I love your graphs. I love your maps. I love your everything that you presented for us. I appreciate. I think it's gives us a good visual of where we are as a city. And when I initially heard my first orientation, we had 200-plus buildings. It raised my eyebrows. I thought, hey, we could probably reduce our real estate footprint somewhere in there and turn it back to the private sector and maybe they can find productive ways to use it and we can increase our tax revenues. So my one little comment would be that this is the kind of work that you did a great job at, but it really is the kind of work that an auditor does. And this is one of the things that I've pushed for when I ran for city council and continue to advocate for, which is that we try to find a way to make auditing a regular occurrence. Like you said, not just when a councilman happens to ask about the question, but have a professional auditor who's constantly looking at both the buildings that are completely unutilized and even a percentage unutilized to find efficiencies. I think that's important to our taxpayers and a good way if we can find things and see things and hopefully make some changes that are good for our city. I've gone through it myself a little bit recently with the consolidation of two properties that I own. And it's not always easy, and I kind of miss things about one of them, but it's the right thing to do, and it's a lot better not to have to take care of two when you got one. I can vouch for that. So I appreciate the work that's been done, and if you wouldn't mind providing that presentation to maybe all members of council, I think that would be helpful. Awesome.
Anyone else? Mr. Wilder?
Thank you for the presentation, really appreciate it. Again, my sister worked at Opportunity House with your husband as well several years ago. So I've been all through that Opportunity House. She would fix the kids breakfast, and they always loved it. She was there because my sister, Sister Debbie, she was always overboard and taking care of the kids at Opportunity House in our group homes. So thank you for that presentation. Brought a lot of memories. Again, thank you again for the staff. Again, we always are prudent in what we do. And with the auditing of the team and getting that annual audit together and just making sure we're using our resources for the best for our community. I'm just so thankful that we have such an amazing team, Public Works and all the staff we have. You're always looking after the taxpayers. You're always trying to make investments in our employees and also investments in our community to see what we can do best for our citizens and looking at property, how it can better be utilized. So we have a strong management team and a strong team together with strong leaders. That's one of their assignments to do is to make sure we're utilizing this space best. One question I do have is with the social service building downtown, why is the elevator so slow? Can you please, I beg of you, can you please look into that and get back with me and let me know? Thank you, I appreciate it, thank you.
Is there any more questions for Mr. Sean? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Next portion is going to be both Greg and Donna, and this is kind of a potpourri of different questions that have been posed by many of you and that we've received. So, Greg?
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Manager. We are the only city for 50 miles. The nearest apples to our apple, Roanoke, Danville, Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, kind of throughout the budget process, we've received from council and especially from the community in a lot of the budget and brews sessions, questions around the services we provide and the relative value that folks are receiving from the services, kind of the bang for the buck, so to speak. This presentation is designed to provide a little context around that question. One of the things I think you're going to find is it's going to look very similar to the presentation in a lot of ways that Tim Mitchell gave last week. It's because we in the city manager's office have been a little bit jealous of Tim lately. Tim has had some support from Jason Snyder, who's in the back, who is an absolute whiz with PowerPoint and graphics. So what did we do? We stole him, and we asked him to help us put this presentation together. Also want to shout out to Sean because there's a huge data component to this. So Sean and Jason worked really hard to put together some of the graphics and the information to help provide good context here. Mitch, if you can go to the next slide. So what we did is we took a look at, we coined this term, we're going to take credit for that. We wanted to take a look at the Virginia 15. This is the 15 largest cities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. all of whom have a population of 40,000, not, see, we're in budget season, I about said dollars, 40,000 residents or more. They are in order of population right there. Virginia Beach with the largest, and then Danville of the 15 with just over 40,000. You can see we are 11th there. The cities that are highlighted in light blue are probably the most similar to the city of Lynchburg. I was trying to coin a term for them as we were sitting here a little bit earlier. I came up with the Western Five, but I'm not sure if that really fits at this point. Next slide. So how do we compare? The first thing we looked at is the real estate tax rates for the Virginia 15. What you'll see here is the city of Lynchburg has the second lowest real estate tax rate of all the cities of the Virginia 15 at 89 cents. Danville is the lowest at 83. The average is $1.09. We range from Danville at 83 cents to Portsmouth at $1.30. I think it's important to note that the 2025 or the proposed 2026 budget in Danville includes $35 million of revenue from the casino. That's $21.7 million in gaming tax revenue that the state collects and gives back to the city, and then the remainder of that, a little more than $13 million from a development agreement between the casino developer and the city itself. Next slide. As we discussed, the median single-family home value in the city of Lynchburg is $219,100, which means the average single-family homeowner in Lynchburg is paying $162.50 in real estate tax per month. So we asked the question, what if we drop that same house at that same value in the other Virginia 15 cities? And you see the result. In Portsmouth, at $1.30, that same resident would be paying $237.36. And Danville, on the bottom of the list there, would be paying $151.54. Again, Lynchburg residents paying on average, or the median single-family homeowner paying $162.50. The average among the Virginia 15, just over $200, and the average among the cities that are most similar to us, again, Roanoke, Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, Danville, $184.41. Next slide. So we looked at what has happened really since the pandemic to the real estate tax rates across those Western Five. I'm going to go ahead and say it. What you can see here is Harrisonburg actually went up by 15 cents. Charlottesville up by a few pennies. Roanoke has stayed level at $1.22. Danville, their real estate tax rate has decreased by a penny. And in Lynchburg, our tax rate has decreased from $1.11 down to 89 cents. Next slide, please, Mitch. How do we compare on the expenditure side? So this slide's going to take a little bit of explaining. First of all, for those of you who like data, I would suggest that you go and you visit the Auditor of Public Accounts website for the state of Virginia, and you look at their comparative local government reporting. It is just chock full of super interesting information. That's what we've used to put together this slide. Unfortunately, the most recent APA data dates back to 2023, but it's still instructive as we look at this information. For this comparison, we're going to have to call it the Virginia 14 because Portsmouth had some trouble with their financial statements and didn't actually report on time. And what this data shows is per capita, what do each of these cities spend in these various service types? Human services, public safety, public works, parks, rec, culture, community development, libraries, and education. Now, again, these numbers are back from 2023, which means before the real estate tax rate was reduced from $1.11 to 89 cents. But where we ranked at that point in time, in per capita spending, human services, public safety, public works we're in the top half. If you look at parks, rec, and culture, community development, libraries, I don't think there's very many people in the city that wouldn't say, that wouldn't say we don't have great parks, rec, and culture amenities, a great library system, and receive good value from our community development department. And we do all of that with near the bottom per capita spending across the Virginia 14 in this instance. And then, of course, if we look at public education, of the 14 cities, we have the lowest per capita spending in public education. Next slide, Mitch. So the question that would occur to me to ask if we were looking at real estate tax rates and we were to say, hey, Lynchburg has a relatively low real estate tax rate, are we making it up in other areas? And the answer is no, we aren't. What we did is we took the combined taxes and fees that a single-family homeowner would most likely have to pay if you own a home. And these are the taxes and fees that you pay into the general fund. Water, sewer, stormwater, those are separate services, so we didn't include those here. Although I will tell you our rates are significantly lower than almost anywhere in the Commonwealth. And what we arrived at is you're paying real estate tax, you're paying personal property tax, and what we did for this analysis is we looked at a home that would have 2 vehicles at a $10,000 per vehicle average. Folks might say, hey, $10,000, that doesn't seem very much. It's actually more than the average vehicle cost in the city of Lynchburg, which I think, and Sean would correct me if I'm wrong, is somewhere around $8,500. Then your motor vehicle license fee, trash collection fee, consumer utility taxes, and we compared us to the Western 5 here. So in Lynchburg, across those taxes and fees, we're looking at an average cost we're looking at a cost for a household of $232.19 per month, more than only Danville there, and significantly less than Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, and especially Roanoke. And Roanoke, if you look at population, you look at demographics, they're probably more similar to Lynchburg than any other city in the Commonwealth. Next slide, Mitch. So what we wanted to show here is the relative value a Lynchburg homeowner receives for the taxes and fees that they pay. So this is the same $232 from the last slide on a monthly basis. That's what you're paying. And it provides all the services above. Public safety, K-12 schools, parks, trails, community centers, recreational activities, historic resources, trash collection. I'm not going to read all the bullets here. And then we took a look at what a typical household would pay as an electric bill per month. And this typical household, I'm going to call it typical. It's actually Sean's house. Sean lives in a 1,500 square foot house. It was built in 1986. 3 people live there, and he's using on average 1,443 kilowatt hours per month, which translates into an electric bill of $250. So Sean is paying a $250 electric bill per month, and that's actually more than the typical Lynchburg homeowner would pay for all the services that you see up there on the screen. So again, pretty darn good bang for your buck, and just wanted to provide some context around the relative value that a homeowner in Lynchburg receives for their taxes in the city. So that's what we have for you today. I hope that was interesting. I hope you enjoyed the visuals on the screen. I think Jason and Sean did a great job putting that together.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from Mr. Gregg? Marty?
Try not to be first.
Good. Mr. Wilder?
Yes, thank you so much. Can you go back to the one, yeah, that one? Yeah, wow. That is amazing to see how Lynchburg compares to other areas. especially our investment in education. We've just seen the great increases for our police and our fire department, but not the same increases in our education system, which is so important. But I just think they need to be noted. Wow. Excellent. Thank you for this presentation. This is amazing. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It just gives us a lot of information. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr.
I'm waiting. I was going to see if anybody else had anything to say, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple things looking at this. One is education. Where do these other localities stack up on enrollment? Because that is the question, right? That defines that.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is based on per capita
So-
spending,
So per capita would be the citizens, correct?
Citizens, absolutely,
So
yeah.
80,000. But it doesn't take into account the difference in enrollment, the difference in pupils, the number of daily customers that we have in the schools.
Yeah, and we could probably, and again, we pulled all this from the APA data. We could
Sure.
certainly recast that based on an ADM number for all of these localities. And again, this is just the local contribution. It doesn't take into consideration the state's contribution as well.
Sure, and yeah, because when you look at that, it's not factoring in, the composite index, the, local ability to pay, those sorts of things. It would also be great to see where we are with the fiscal stress factor that comes from the Commission on Local Government as it relates to these other localities. Where do we rank with the fiscal stress of our citizens? Because there's so many things that come into this, right? You can't talk about what the median taxation is on our citizens without also talking about what the median income is, right? Because if the taxation may be different proportionally in some areas, it may look different, right? As far as I'm concerned, we got to beat Danville.
Well, you get me a casino that generates $35 million in annual revenue, and we'll talk about lowering the tax rate.
And it's, well, I think that's for us to do. We don't want a casino, but I think that's for us to decide on whether or not we're lowering the tax rate. But something else that I think, and I've talked to this, about this before, right? Human services. We have got to lean in on our legislators to do something different. Because we have, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but from what I understand, the funding we get from the Commonwealth of Virginia for human services is based on our population. Is that correct?
I am not an expert here, but I will tell you
You're
that.
pretty close.
I'm,
You're pretty close.
That is my understanding as well, but I reserve the right to be slightly wrong.
Okay. And so, from my understanding, we're given funding from the Commonwealth based on population. Yet here in Lynchburg, we have the same caseload as Virginia Beach.
Our
Northern Virginia?
number of cases compared to our population is through the roof. And we couldn't agree with you more on this. The pie's the pie at the state level, right?
Sure.
But what we would like to see is that we get a share of the pie equal to the level of work we're putting into human services.
100%.
Not equal to the population of the city.
And that's something I think that we need, and Mechie?
Yes.
Major legislative priority for us this year is we need to get somebody to try to advance a bill that modernizes this, because right now we're getting the raw end of the stick. If we're taking care of these folks, because that's what we do. We take care of them, right? Because that's what we got to do. But the state should be compensating us based on caseload, based on the work we're doing, just like you said, not based on the population of the city, because you can't compare. I mean, when you look at us compared to some of these Northern Virginia localities that we're getting the same caseload as, they have double, triple, probably quadruple the population in their localities. Is that right?
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
more.
there was a very good comparison. We were working through, a number of months ago, I think it compared us to Fairfax County, and we had similar numbers of overall cases in some areas to Fairfax County, despite our population being,
Anybody have the
1/20th.
population of Fairfax County, Andy?
It's almost 2 million, I think.
It's almost 2 million, so 80,000, same amount of caseload, 2 million population. And they're funded based on their 2 million population, but we're funded based on our 80,000 population. Commonwealth needs to do their job, right? And they need to help us out here because it would go a long way, I do believe. Even just moving that needle a little, I think would go a long way for our Human Services Department, which would go a long way for our citizens. That's all that I had. So how do we get to the bottom? And then how do we fix this thing with the state?
Based on what you're saying, Lynchburg have the tendency to take care of people more than other areas. So we get that influx because they know that we're going to take care of them, and that's part of that problem there.
Sure. And I think that we can ask the state to chip in a little more if we're going to take care of folks.
So we need to learn how to say no a little bit too. Because they come here, they know they're going to get assistance. They know we're not going to turn them away. And they stay, and we end up pouring into it. But that's something we need to work on as a whole city.
Yes, sir.
How do we help the underprivileged? And like you said, include the state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And with that,
Next up is Donna. Donna has a couple, I said it was a potpourri, so this is really a potpourri of different things that have been asked of city staff about the budget.
Go ahead. So we had a couple of questions related to transportation projects. We'll walk through those, and also a couple of clarifications for Greenview Drive. So transportation projects. We've done some additional work on the Wigington Road Improvements Project. The scope has been revised again. The longer you have, the more you can study. So Wigington Road improvements, including the signal at Old Forest Road, the 5-year plan estimate is about $2.6 million, with 2.2 being local funding and $370,000 being the developer contribution. This does not include what would be in the area of Wigington Road and Desmond T. Doss Memorial Expressway. So that would not be within our 5-year plan, because it can be done at a later time. We would have to look into whether a traffic signal would be recommended there or a roundabout. If it's a traffic signal, it definitely would not qualify for smart scale funding and most likely not revenue share. But if it's a roundabout, of course, the cost is a lot more, but it would potentially qualify for revenue share and smart scale. So again, that would be down the road and something that we would continue to look into and work with our engineers and how that would work. Just to be clear, though, the Bedford Avenue improvements projects and the Peaksview Park athletic field lighting projects, those were examples of something that we would have to look at funding. They're currently in the CIP that is proposed for fiscal year '26, but when we move this project in, staff is really going to have to do some work about how these funds fit into '26, with the cash flow being between '26 and '27. The Greenview Drive project, the question from Councilmember Mischens was what the source of the funding was for expanding Phase 1 and why this was prioritized in 2007. In the 2008-2012 CIP, the Greenview Drive improvements were under one project, and they were later split into 2 projects. Phase 1 was Frederick Drive to Hermitage Road. So this project was originally the Timberlake Logan's Lane project. But due to a shift of citywide priorities, those funds were moved to the Greenview Drive project. And these were to specifically improve traffic conditions on Greenview Drive from city limits to the existing Ford Lane. And the project includes improving the intersection of Leesville Road and Greenview Drive. Originally intended to have a variety of funding sources, but Phase 1 it ended up being all local funding. So Phase 1 from Frederick Drive to Hermitage Road was local funding. Phase 2 was Hermitage Road to Leesville Road. It was included beginning in the 2009 to the 2013 CIP, and it became a fully managed VDOT project. It did have some local funds, but also revenue share, the VDOT urban allocation funds. But those funds, the local funds were turned over to VDOT, and they fully managed that property, meaning we did not pay for the project management or any of that. That was completely done by VDOT. I think there was, this Greenview Drive, I believe, was used as an example for funding projects for development. But Cornerstone on Greenview Drive is a mixed-use project, and the Village at West Point on Wigington is a residential only. And the city has not funded road improvements for residential-only developments in our CIP, but we have done traditionally the curb, gutter, and sidewalks. And I believe for Greenview Drive, the city paid for 100% of those instead of just 50%.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions for Ms. Donald?
So, how many projects have we had where we've had 750 units proposed for residential? How many times has that happened, where we're looking at like that amount of?
I don't know how many are in Cornerstone or Windhurst, but those were mixed-use projects. I don't know how many residential
Sure.
units are in there.
But as far
That's
as
not mine.
size of the size and scope of the development, let's just be clear that 750 units is not our everyday normal. You know, I think if we were, that would be a good question to go back and look at, is to see how many times have we had a 750 owner-occupied complex proposed in the city, right?
Well, I think if you look at the neighborhoods across the city, what you would see is there's only like 4 or 5 that come close to that size. I think, you know, staff agrees it's a great development out there. The only concern that we had was setting a precedent that we'd never set before, which was funding road improvements as part of a rezoning request for residential-only development. That was really it. I don't think we would in any way question the merits of the development. I mean, it's going to be hugely important.
So the next question I have is then why were the Wigington Road improvements removed? Because they were originally first put on the CIP in 2005 for Boxwood, Bethel Park, and Bethel Estates. They're in there. It's on the city's website. So the improvements for Wigington Road were in the CIP in 2005, and then they went away by 2010, I think. So, you know, when we look at priorities, sometimes we got to take a look at maybe bringing back priorities that were kind of missed, because apparently it was a priority to do Wigington Road improvements for Boxwood, Bethel Estates, and Bethel Park back then. And I know that those were the new, when you look at the CIP project, it tells you specifically because of new subdivisions, right, in the 2005 CIP. And I know from living here for, you know, since 1996, that the developments that were developed off of Wigington Road at that time frame were Boxwood, Bethel Park, Bethel Estates. So why was it a priority for the city to put Wigington Road improvements on the CIP in 2005 for those residential-only subdivisions? And then by 2010, I think if you look at the CIPs historically, they go from deferred, right, it's a new project, and then it goes to deferred, and then it goes to unfunded, and then it just disappeared.
Again, I think, first of all, if you go from 2005 to 2010, we'll figure out the answer, but I can tell you, we had a great recession hit, and lots of things got, lots of changes that had to happen. We don't have the answer to the question right now, obviously, but none of those improvements were a part of a rezoning request where a residential-only development had a traffic study done. The traffic study suggested or recommended certain improvements, and then the city paid for them. That's the only difference, right? Again, the development, it's going to be a great development. We just, the concern was setting a precedent that we'd never set in the past.
So, but I mean, that's why I asked that question, though, because if you look at, hold on, I'm pulling it up right now. The CIP, right? So you're talking about a precedent. A precedent means something we've never done before, right? If you look at the FY 2005, man, it's hard saying that. I'm trying to say 2020 something. 2005 CIP. I'm gonna read exactly what it said about Wigington. It said, Wigington Road improvements, new construction expansion. Lee Newland, who's still our engineering guy, is the name on it. Wigington Road from 501 to Marguerite Drive, that's Boxwood, right? Right of way to be acquired is the status of project site. It says improve horizontal and vertical curvature of highly traveled roads, phase 1 of 2-phase project. I can't find anything on the second phase. And then when you move forward and you go to 2006, it shows you where it says Wigington. Wigington Road improvements. Improve horizontal project description, right? Wigington Road from 501 to Marguerite Drive. So this is the next year, the fiscal year 2006 capital improvement program. Project description, improve horizontal and vertical curvature of highly traveled road with increasing traffic volumes due to new subdivision construction. So if we're going to talk about a precedent, right? In 2006, we very clearly made this a priority to do these improvements on Wigington Road. It's in the CIP. So I just want to make sure that we're being objective, that we're looking at this the way we should be as far as looking at the facts. These folks 20 years ago were promised these, or not necessarily promised, but 20 years ago, a city council and a city staff said, you know what? We got traffic on Wigington Road from these subdivisions, Boxwood, Bethel Park, Bethel Estates. Because of that traffic, we as a city need to improve the roads, right? Because of those subdivisions. And that was on here. And it says, continue to use data to allocate CIP funds for projects to improve safety as the relationship to the comprehensive plan. So why, and when you look at the dollar amounts back then, when you march it out, I think, back then you're looking at total of about $950,000. What's that equate to today?
More?
More
lot
than,
more.
more than what we've got on here?
Yes, the only thing I'd add is, those are all single-family developments and large lots. And I don't know who's in the room, but I'd be willing to guess that they didn't require a rezoning. And if they don't require a rezoning, then there's no opportunity for the city, as part of the rezoning, to require proffers for the improvements.
Are we allowed to tell a developer what to proffer?
We are allowed to not complete a rezoning.
Well, that ship sailed, so let's stop talking about it.
We're not talking about that. We're talking
Okay.
about the other improvements that you
Got
brought
it.
up. If a developer completes a by right development and creates traffic on the road, and the city had no opportunity to approve or not approve it, then we may because the development happened, want to go in and make improvements to the road. The difference is, we had an opportunity as part of a rezoning to have the developer pay for those, where we didn't in these single-family home developments. That's the only difference. All are great developments. We've just never had an opportunity to do a rezoning, require the developer to pay for the road improvements that their traffic study said they should have paid for, and then not done it.
Now, does the traffic study say who should pay for it?
No, the traffic study says it should be done. We have always, as a city, in those instances, required the developer to pay for it as part of a rezoning. That's it.
So every time, we've always required 100%.
It is my understanding from the Community Development Department, from Public Works, that we are unaware of a situation where a rezoning was requested. That rezoning had a traffic study done as a part of it. And the traffic study recommended improvements where we did not require, as part of the rezoning, the developer to complete and pay for the improvements.
Sure. And I guess the next question is, were you aware that Wigington road improvements were on the CIP in the past?
I was not, but it's a totally different situation because there was no rezoning and no opportunity
Sure.
to have the developer pay for those improvements.
So the question I think that I have is, clearly we saw from the Greenview Drive example with Cornerstone, sometimes priorities shift, right? I would like to have more information on the Forest Brook Road proposed. And I know that you mentioned some cash flow would be needed next year, and I see that Forest Brook Road Phase 1 doesn't have that, but we're looking at a total accumulated project cost of $9.3 million on Forest Brook Road, Phase 1. And what is Phase 2 on that? Would be another good question. I think that would be something interesting to take a look at. And I think that's that. I just want to make sure that we're grounded in, when you're saying we're setting a precedent.
Okay.
Let's make sure we're grounded in the facts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reed?
I think, just for clarification, and I appreciate your point, Mr. Patrick, it is two separate things, because the developments back then had already been built, and the city had clearly at some point, and those councils had then voted separate to make improvements to Wigington Road, separate of the developments on their own, and allocated funds, and then at some point made some changes. Not required by those developers. Completely different. It was a choice that the council voted on to take the taxpayer dollars and appropriate them to a CIP, and at some point changed their minds. So at some point, it was taken out of the CIP, right? So it was there, it wasn't there, but it was not mandated by the developers to put it there. That is what we're talking about now. That is part of this deal. That is the problem that the citizens are having. That is the problem that some of the council members are having, is that this developer has now, like you said, requiring a precedent to be set where we are agreeing to have a development that not everybody is upset about the development. There are a lot of people that are, but the problem is the developer is now requiring taxpayer dollars to pay for said road improvements. And that is the precedent that is being set in this situation that was not set in 2005. So that is a completely different situation. That is the problem people are having, and that is what now we are doing with taxpayer dollars that taxpayers have not agreed to do. And we continue to hear from council members trying to find every way in the world to justify this decision to make it right. That is what I continue to hear. The same council members that are constantly talking about saving taxpayer dollars, every 5 seconds at a meeting, now are wanting to justify something that's never been done in a residential case per Mrs. Witt. So, we can continue to search through every single budget in history to try to find some way to prove a case to make it right, but the bottom line, it's not going to be right. You can make it want it to be right because you want it to be right, and because you want to support the developer. But we have a lot of citizens who aren't happy about the development, and we have a lot of citizens who are not happy that $2.25 million of their money are going to go to a road that they did not decide they wanted it to go to, no matter how hard you try to make your case, sir. And that's the bottom line. So I appreciate you pointing that out. I appreciate the hard work. It would have been nice to have been able to table this discussion to work through some of these things, like Mr. Martin had wanted us to do, but we didn't get that opportunity. It is what it is. I understand the mayor is trying to have conversations and work some things out. I hope that maybe some different things are going to happen, but the bottom line is we are where we are. But we need to stop trying to justify it. It is what it is. Quit reaching. We're going to have to just get over the fact that it's been done. But
Thank you,
thank you.
thank you. Briefly.
Oh, great, thanks, sir. Not Richard. One answer. Right. Don't want emotionally charged things to get in the way of finding out the facts. And, you know, I think another good question would be to know if we've ever had anything like this proposed, that amount of owner-occupied units. I think that might be a question I asked previously. So, and thank you for getting that historical information on Greenview. That was very, very helpful. Also, it'd be good to know when Boxwood, Bethel Park, and Bethel Estates were developed.
Got it.
Mr. Dean. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, on to our business item briefings. First, we have Ms. Melva Walker with our FY 2026 Community Development Advisory Committee recommendations. Melva.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Good
And
to
Vice
see you.
Mayor and members of council. City Administration accepted applications for the fiscal year 2026 Community Development Block Grant and Home Program. While the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has not provided the final entitlement amounts for fiscal year 2026, city staff used the fiscal year 2025 entitlement amounts for the review by the Community Development Advisory Committee, CDAC. And you see those here on the screen. We used, for CDBG, we used 722, 622, and then for the home program, 302, 774, and we had $100,000 come back from the previous allocation to the FAR Foundation, the Lighthouse Beloved Community Land Trust, because that project did not move forward. CDAC conducted a public meeting on April the 3rd and reviewed the submitted CDBG and home program applications and formulated recommendations for consideration by City Council. These preliminary recommendations have been provided to you. As you can see here, these are the CDBG recommendations. Administration, the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Plan, Phase 2 improvements, Miriam's House for the coordinated entry, intake, and access person, Miriam's House for the Extreme Weather Center, and the Blue Ridge Mountain Council Boy Scouts of America. And then under the home program, they had recommendations for administration, Rush Homes for the Carolyn's Place rental housing project, the Greater Lynchburg Habitat for Humanity for home ownership, and LENCAG also for home ownership. This matter will come to you all for a public hearing on May 13th.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Mel? No? Mr. Wilder?
I insist.
Oh, nonsense, please.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, gentlemen. Mr. Wilder?
Okay, yes, I sit on the CDAC committee. Again, thank you, Ms. Walker, for your work on that committee. It's wonderful to see our citizens be a part of that committee, our citizens have that voice on how those dollars are being spent. for the various neighborhoods. So I really appreciate the work with all the citizens that volunteered their services for that committee, and all of my nonprofits and different agencies that work together for homelessness, for rental assistance, for various other housing opportunities, home down payment assistance, for all the groups that work together for our population that really need that assistance. So it's so important that we continue to do that. I think it's an amazing program from the CDBG funds, how we use those funds. I really appreciate the work. Also, the Diamond Hill plan and getting that started. The citizens of Diamond Hill are really excited about that. So it's just some great work being done in our community with these funds. So we appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank you for coming and presenting to this. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Next, we have the 2025 school board appointment process, and your city clerk, Alicia Finney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. School board appointment process is fast approaching, so the purpose of the presentation today is just to outline the process that past councils have done, get head nods and feedback from you all, and then quickly look at the application. Next slide. Oh. No, it's okay.
Trusting me with this? Right. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and then one more slide. So each year, there are 3 terms that expire, one from each district. This year in District 1 is Mr. Anthony Andrews. District 2 is Dr. Martin Day. District 3 is Ms. Gloria Preston. All members are concluding their first term and are eligible to serve again if they are interested. Just an important item to note, they would be subject to the same process that all candidates would. Next slide, please. So the schedule after this presentation at the work session, I'll go up the road to make the same presentation to the school board. It's really just an appeal to their audience and get any interested candidates to apply. What to expect at your first public hearing. So state code does dictate that all names for candidates need to be read into the record. So I will do that, and we'll be collecting applications up until that first public hearing. Historically, councils have held over their first public hearing into a second public hearing. That's just to allow more interested candidates to apply. So I've scheduled that here for you all if that's something you choose to do. At the close of that hearing, you all could begin to select your candidates. Like I said, we will be taking applications up until that public hearing. So I have held space for you on June 10th to finalize your candidate selection under general business. And then that block between the June 10th and June 24th meeting is when you all would conduct interviews. Now, past councils have held these in open meetings. Typically, it looks like 2 4-hour block days. We keep to about a 30-minute interview, so that leaves you 16 candidates to interview. We can certainly expand or lessen depending on what you all decide. So those would be live streamed and again, open to the public. And then June 24th, the appointments will be made during general business in open session and contingent upon background checks, both state and national. Next slide. So again, what to expect. So applicants who apply during the public hearing, that's really their time to come and speak to their qualifications. That's time for parents and community members to come and speak to those qualifications as well. Interviews will be held in open meeting. Council deliberations and appointments will be held in open meeting. And then, of course, the state and national criminal background checks for those selected. Next slide. So what's on your school board application? Right now, we have just basic contact information. Your ward and district are captured. Then we ask 2 questions. What experience do you offer as a candidate for Lynchburg School Board? And what do you feel you would contribute to the Lynchburg School Board and to the community if appointed? There is an option to upload your resume. It's optional, but strongly encouraged. And these are not going to be made available to the public for personnel information for FOIA. Next slide. So that is what I have outlined. That is what past councils have done. I'm looking for any feedback that you all have on both the process and the application, if there is any.
Is there any discussion from Ms. Finney? Marty?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. One is, thank you for doing this. Thank you for putting this together and marking out that schedule for us. That's very helpful to have those dates. Is this uploaded for us to see?
It is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. The 2 things that I wanted to ask about were, one, are we doing anything to validate residents right now? Is
Their
there-
residency.
Sure.
So yes, we do check ward and we check district maps from the addresses that they give us.
So are we doing anything to get them to prove that they live where they live when they give us that?
No, we are not.
That's something I'd be interested in looking into to make sure we're actually just trust but verifying the where they live, to make sure we're actually putting people on this governing body that live in the district they're supposed to live in.
Sure.
And then the second question or second thing that I have is, and this probably would take more discussion, is I'm still in favor of doing a ballot method for this. I think we should switch to a ballot method for this rather than, the motion and substitute motion and all that stuff like we've been doing the last 2 years. I think that if we did a ballot method, much like we elect
Okay.
mayor and vice mayor, that would be much more objective, much less emotionally charged, and would just give us an opportunity to, everybody gets the ballot, they write who they want on it, and we just continue down the line. If we got to draw straws or whatever it is. You're probably familiar with the process, I think.
So I guess to me, a ballot method is how you all do mayor and vice mayor elections.
Exactly the same way.
Well, so there is a motion. You say, I want this person, I want that person, and then you all write from those candidate pool.
From the nominations.
Correct.
So it'd be like, there's a nomination, we've got a nominating, whoever the nominees are, whoever's nominated to fill that seat, and then when we actually vote on it, we do it by ballot instead of doing the, I motion Dr. Sterling Wilder for school board or something to that effect. Instead of doing it that way, actually, we've got whoever the slate is, the people that we can consider, and then we just use a ballot method to appoint them. I think that would be helpful.
Right?
It's your process, so, I mean, now's your time to talk about it and iron it out.
We're missing 2 council members, so.
We are, and I did speak to Vice Mayor Feraldi. I knew he wasn't going to, or not, sorry, excuse me, Councilmember Feraldi. I knew he wasn't going to be here today, and he did mention that he may not be in favor of a ballot process. So it does sound like there would not be consensus from council for that.
He's not here.
All right, so if the ballot process is something that you all would like to consider, then we can, of course, schedule out some time for a vote on that. Yeah, okay.
Find the way it's been.
So maybe at the June 10th general business item is where we can hammer out that process. Yeah.
I think I need to see it. I really like the idea of validating their, either through the voter registrar's office or something,
Sure.
so that they actually are residents. We've done our due diligence on that. I think it's pretty easy. Should be pretty quick. Saves us potential embarrassment down the road. As far as a process for voting, I would really like to hear specific proposals of how that would go. I've watched how we've done it in the past, and I always thought it was a little more emotional, and then I would like to do an election. I want people to make good decisions. So maybe if you want to put together a proposal.
I'm happy to
However
work
you
with
wanna do
council
it.
members. I do have some literature you sent me before. Councilmember
Last year, I
Mischens.
think I sent you an outline
Yeah.
process, I think. right?
I'm happy to put together some options and then have you all vote on that. Yeah. I guess I kind of was hoping that this would be the time that you all hammered it out, so that people applying would know what they're entering as far as the process goes.
So I guess, I'm sorry. So I guess what would be the difference then for them between the 2 processes that you're concerned about? Like, that they would not know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's all the same. Right now, there is a motion and a second for somebody and then a vote. And the majority rules for that vote. And then I guess the second option would be the ballot method, where you all name somebody, speak to their qualifications, and then vote. So I guess as far as putting myself in the citizen's shoes, maybe there isn't something too disruptive. I just would like to be able to be clear in what they're entering
Right, so the
in.
ballot method, it's whoever gets the most votes the first round is the winner, so to speak, or the person that's.
Correct.
Versus when we motion and a second, there's always the opportunity for a
Substitute,
substitute
correct.
motion or whatever. And so there's the possibility for a change of some sort. or a modification in that process versus just doing it one way and that's it. So that would be the difference. Right.
Go ahead, Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, that's actually completely inaccurate. That in the procedure that we have outlined, you've got to get to 4 votes. And there's a process for that. So it wouldn't be whoever gets the most votes out of, so if you got like a 3-2-1-1, does that up to equal 7? Yeah, 3-2-1-1. So whoever got 3 votes wouldn't be the board member. You would still have to get to 4 votes, and there's a process outlined in here that explains how that goes. It's very similar to, I think, how it's mentioned in Robert's rules, and that would absolutely, I would never want to appoint a school board member that didn't get a majority vote of city council. So same way, we've got to get a majority vote for our mayor and our vice mayor. We need to get a majority vote for our school board members. And the process lays out, you've got it, there's a way to handle that. And that's totally different than what you described.
So it sounds like there's 2 options, and I can speak to both of those as far as messaging to our community for these interested applicants, and then I'm happy to bring both options back at our June 10th.
Yes.
When you finalize your candidate selection, then I can ask you all to let me know what option you would like, whether it's a ballot method or motion and second.
Yes.
Right, that's why I was just asking for clarification. That's what I was asking. Thank
Okay.
you.
And just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, the main reason that I want to do this and go this way is because I do not think that we should be advocating against these people who volunteer their time in their effort to apply for this process and participate in this process. And with a ballot method,
It's-
you don't have to argue against somebody. Does that make sense? And I don't want to
but
do
it's-
that.
It's still majority win.
Still majority wins. I just don't want to have to argue against. If I see somebody I think is unfit for the school board, rather than be vocal and say why I think they're unfit for the school board, I'd rather just write somebody else's name on a ballot and pass it down.
Ms. Alicia, formalize that for us, please.
I sure will.
Thank you.
And then noted on the proof of residency.
Yes.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next item, we have 3 more bids. Next one is the new Hillcats baseball franchise and the amendment to the local tax exceptions. I will tell you that this presentation was not uploaded in time. I was responsible for putting it together, and quite frankly, ran out of time. But we'll make sure it gets attached and it gets sent around to all of council. We have talked about this franchise on a number of different occasions, and wanted to run through the proposed actions. First, city staff has, with the help of a consultancy who specializes in minor league baseball franchise and lease negotiations, negotiated a new 15-year franchise agreement with the Lynchburg Hillcats baseball team. Staff is going to recommend City Council approve the proposed franchise agreement, but that approval requires 3 actions by City Council. First, it's the approval of the franchise itself. Secondly is the removal of the existing amusement tax exemption from city code that is, in practice, unique to the Hillcats, and then amending the fiscal year 2025 through 29 capital improvement plan to add a new project to improve fan amenities at the city-owned Bank of the James baseball stadium. Next slide. So prior actions. First, we'll go all the way back to 1886. Lynchburg's first professional baseball team, very creatively named the Lynchburgs, begin playing in the city of Lynchburg. 1940, City Stadium, what is now Bank of the James Stadium, was constructed, and this makes us one of the oldest active ballparks in minor league baseball with 85 years of continuous operation. I can tell you this is a fact that the new ownership group at the Hillcats is going to run with. They're going to make sure that it is clear to anyone entering the grand old ballpark that we have been in operation for a long, long time. In February 2016, City Council granted a 10-year franchise to Lynchburg Baseball Corp. to allow the Lynchburg Hillcats to continue to play its games at the Bank of the James Stadium. In fall of 2024, the Hillcats Baseball LLC, led by Mr. Dylan Narang, purchased the Lynchburg Hillcats baseball team. October of '24, City Council adopted a resolution consenting to that sale and allowing the assignment of the current franchise to the new ownership group. The current franchise ends at the end of the 2025 baseball season. And then currently, there is a new 15-year franchise on the table for City Council to consider. Next slide. Franchise overview. This would allow the Hillcats to use public infrastructure. This is why it's a franchise and not a lease. Also, the period of time is longer than could be contemplated in a lease. So it allows the Hillcats to use the Bank of the James Stadium to operate a minor league baseball team. The existing franchise, again, expires after the 2025 season. The new franchise will replace the final year of the current agreement. So that new 15-year franchise would actually begin with this season and run through the 2039 baseball season. The city will collect rent, parking rights fee, naming rights fee, and other local taxes, sales, meals, amusement as a result of the operations of the baseball team. That revenue will then support a more than $5 million upfront investment in the stadium, primarily to improve the fan experience when you go to a Hillcats game. The agreement continues the annual maintenance reserve to ensure that we complete all the basic maintenance on the stadium and that we are able to keep up with the ongoing Major League Baseball stadium requirements that exist for minor league baseball teams. That maintenance reserve would increase from $100,000 up to $150,000 a year. Really, this is just keeping pace with inflation. There is lots of protection for the city in this from an early termination standpoint. If the Hillcats were to leave Lynchburg, they would be required to pay us $100,000 cash for each year remaining on the franchise, and then would be required to pay us back the unamortized amount of the initial $5.25 million improvements. So, and the way we would amortize that isn't based on finance, but it's based on, the term of the franchise. So every year they basically vest into 1/15 of the $5.25 million investment, even though it's our facility we're improving. Next slide, please. Financial details. These are projections that we developed with Stafford Sports, our consultant, who helped us really understand what the next 15 years are going to look like. We've done this as a baseline, pessimistic and optimistic projection. Based on our baseline projection and assuming that we make the change to the amusement tax exception, we would be looking at almost $7.5 million in revenue generated as a result of having the Hillcats in Lynchburg. Next slide. So again, that change to the local amusement tax exemption. So currently, right now, the Hillcats pay no admissions or amusement tax when you go and you buy a ticket to a Hillcats game. That's very unique. Almost any other professional sports, movie, performance, you're paying admissions tax. We have worked with the Hillcats on this agreement, and they are very much in favor of removing the exception that allows them not to pay the amusement tax and start to charge an amusement tax on their tickets because they know it helps fund the fan amenities going into the ballpark. The key to remember here is those fan amenities, those improvements to our ballpark, they're significantly funded by that proposed amusement tax revenue. I think the number was a little bit more than $2 million over the 15 years. So here's the current language. It says no tax shall be payable under this division for admission to the following amusements or entertainments. And it's number B or letter B, athletic events that are held at a municipal facility or any amusement or entertainment that is sponsored by the city. We would change that to read youth athletic events that are held at a municipal facility or any amusement or entertainment that is sponsored by the city. Youth athletic events mean athletic events involving players under 18 years of age. City Attorney Matt Friedman worked very closely on this language with the intent being that the only thing we would pick up is games at the Hillcats Stadium. And again, the important thing to remember about this, no one likes taxes, but this is only a tax that would be paid by those who actually attend the games. So it's like a user fee, and that user fee goes back into the stadium. Next slide. It would require a amendment to the capital budget. The 25 to 29 capital budget, we would add a $5.25 million project called something like Improved City Stadium Baseball Complex to the 2025 capital budget, and then appropriate the funds. And again, the revenue from the franchise and baseball operations would fund these project costs. And next slide, next steps. So at May 13th, we would have a public hearing and a city council vote to approve the franchise. In between now and then, there is a vestigial process in the state of Virginia that requires a posting of request for bids and a submission of bids that we would bring back to council on the 13th. There would be a public hearing and a city council vote to change the admissions tax exception. And then there would be the first reading of the budget amendment. And then on May 22nd, there would be the second reading of the budget amendment. And that is what I have. Any questions?
Mr. Dima?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Out of curiosity, if somebody else responded to the RFP, what would we do?
We would have to consider that in ways that I don't fully comprehend at this point in time.
I don't imagine anybody wants to jump in at this late date.
I would-
Sounds like we've
unlikely.
got a good marriage with this developer.
We do.
Marty?
Presentation, that was great. And you said something that I got to praise you for saying it. No one likes taxes.
Yes.
You said it. I love it. And I think we all heard it. But no, I appreciate you doing that. I think that this is a great opportunity. And I appreciate the language that you guys put in there for the youth athletic events. I think that's huge. We definitely want to steer clear of that. The only question I have is, what happens if, we get some crack shot ball player that makes the Hillcats at 17,
That makes the Hillcats in 17.
at age 17? Like, what if we get somebody good enough?
So I thought about this too, and I don't know that I have the answer to that question, but we'll find out before the public hearing. It's unlikely. I don't know that you can play professional baseball until you've turned 18, but we will figure it out and make sure that we don't get caught with a unlikely scenario like that.
Well, my 15-year-old, who's a heck of a ball player, is getting ready to turn 16, and I'm going to push him and challenge him to break this ordinance for us. Be the guy that breaks the ordinance, be good enough to be on the Hillcats at age 17.
That would be fantastic. We're rooting for them.
With that, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have Donna Witt with third quarter adjustments.
Thank you. And I'll try to be brief. I know we're pushing our time here. So every year, staff puts together a list of third quarter adjustments. We work with our departments. These are generally things that need corrected in our current budget. So we do have, what we'll go through here is the appropriation of additional dedicated revenue in the general fund. We also are looking at the appropriation of additional projected non-dedicated revenue utilized for additional funding needed in the general fund. We're looking at truing up grant funds and appropriate additional revenues and rescind grants in other funds. So to walk through these briefly, so additional general fund non-dedicated revenues, we would be requesting council appropriate an additional $500,000 for personal property tax and an additional $749,464 in our interest on investments. And these would be the appropriations that we would pay for these adjustments. So uses for these funds, our regional juvenile detention center per diem, we're requesting $525,000 due to an increased usage. We've got more city youth in the detention center than what we projected, so we need more funds there. We're receiving about $3 million more from the state for our CSA fund. Our local match to that is $610,000. Then we've got a couple of transfers we need to clean up in here for our first foster grant program, our Safe and Stable Families, and also appropriate funds for our local match for our COPS hiring grant. We need to appropriate year 2 and year 3, as well as the Bulletproof Vest grant. So additional fund for dedicated revenues. These are generally social services programs where we are receiving additional dedicated fund. There are 3 listed here that do require a local match, and that is our Child Welfare Fund, our Family Preservation Fund, and our View Purchase Services. And also for our additional dedicated revenue, we have Community Corrections and Pretrial Services. We have made a transfer to the City Federal State Aid Fund of $14,438 for their use. We've got a reserve set up for community corrections for probation fees. They did not need those fees, so we're going to return those fees back to their reserve. And also, the library received additional funding from the state aid for libraries of Virginia. We have a general fund use of reserve for the Fire Training Center reserve, and also for the Partners in Emergency Response Reserve. In our other funds, this is our grant fund true-up. For our forfeited assets funds, this is appropriation for the police department for funds that they have received. If you remember, you can't budget those funds, so we true that up in third quarter for funds that they have received. The other side of the Children's Services Act, these are the funds that we have received from the state. Our City Capital Projects Fund, we've got $322,000 for Perrymont Park that was funded in the grant funds, and we're going to move that to the capital funds so we can spend that for the project. And we had an additional $4,453 for interest we want to appropriate to use for the police building. This was off the 2023 bonds where they were invested, that we used that interest to put back into the project. In our water and sewer operating funds, this is to appropriate additional funding for the self-insurance program. And in the stormwater capital project, and we're actually rescinding a grant award that the project is no longer required. In the airport fund, we're appropriating additional revenues to fund increased expenditures related to the inflation and air service development efforts, and also in their capital fund to appropriate additional funding for those projects, and our risk management fund to appropriate additional funds for self-insurance. And that is a mouthful, and that's the list.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Any
You also
discussion?
have attachment A that goes into a further description of each of those.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Thank you, Ms. Witt. Mr. Tim Mitchell.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Next slide. This is related to CertainTeed. CertainTeed is our largest water and sewer customer in the city, and we've had a contract with that facility, previous owners, for decades now, and basically this is renewing that contract. It's a new owner, so it has to be a new contract. Next slide. So just historically, this industry has had a water and sewer contract. It's the largest user. It's a very beneficial contract for both us and the industry, from the standpoint they understand and know what to expect as far as their expenses for the next 5 years. It's a 5-year contract and renewable. And we also have some more assurance that they're going to continue to be a customer, and we have parameters included in the contract related to their wastewater and the capacity of the capacity that they use in the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. So the methodology that we use is based on the actual cost of providing them service. So you see our current city rates in the current contract rates and then the proposed contract rates for CertainTeed. And this is all based, again, included in your packet is the information on how that rate's calculated and the language for the contract. So basically, this would be retroactive to the beginning of the calendar year, and we would settle up with them on that if it's approved. This will go to a public hearing May 13th for council approval. Next slide. And just in summary, CertainTeed is a valuable contract, or valuable industry in the city. We want to continue that relationship with them. This is continuing what we've done in the past in the same methodology. It's consistent with our CSO consent order, which dictates how we have to do industrial contracts, and it is calculated by an outside consultant. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any discussion from Mr. Mitchell? No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Roll call.
So I'll skip it.
No roll call? No one else?
ready?
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question about, and this is probably for you, Ms. Downs. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Good, I'll give you a copy of it, just so you know what I'm talking about. So, I want to get some clarification on this ordinance, the ordinances that talk about when we're supposed to have a supermajority for voting, right? It says, "No money shall be expended for any department of the city government beyond the amount dedicated to such department in the general appropriation ordinance for that fiscal year unless such expenditure be authorized by votes of 5/7 of the members of elected the city council." So I'd like to know kind of like what triggers that we would have to have that supermajority approval, right? To make that vote. And then the second one is ordinances granting aids to various associations. I know this is historically what we've been using with the discretionary external service providers, I think, like Legal Aid and Amazement Square. You can probably help me remember some of those. I think you know what I'm talking about. But it specifically mentions public libraries in here. So what do we need to do to reconcile that to make sure we're in compliance with that? Because this specifically says we need to have it says specifically 5/7 of all the members elected to council for appropriations to public libraries. So I'm just curious about that. And if I've got more copies of it, if anybody wants to see it. So that's all I got for roll call.
Okay, this is something that can be looked at a later date. I have remarks from the mayor. Child Abuse Prevention Month. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, a time to reaffirm our commitment to protecting Lynchburg children. Child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment have lasting impact. Prevention requires the effort of our entire community. Lynchburg stands united against violence towards children. Let us work together to create a safe, nurturing environment for all. We thank the Exchange Club for bringing attention to this important cause, and all of our local, regional organizations that work tireless for this cause. Thank you all. Our next meeting is at 7 o'clock, City Chambers.